so my parents at that time were not allowed to pick the donor because you weren't allowed to pick your donor for a really, really long time. And what they did was they were like, we just match donors up to the dads as best we can. And my dad is Irish, Scottish, and Catholic. And the Catholic part is important. I don't know why it was, but it was because what they said was the most important thing that we match up first before anything else was religion. And I'm like, I understand like our knowledge of genetics is still very like, it's still very new, but really religion, you guys did it.
That's crazy.
What? Like, guys. But we have found out because of Ancestry, my donor is 100% Ashkenazi Jewish.
I was going to say, you don't look, I mean, I guess you look like your mom, but if I had to guess, I would put you more in the Jewish category than the Catholic category.
My mom also took an Ancestry test with me, and she doesn't have a lick of Ashkenazi in her. So I basically look like, I look like the Jewish version of my mother, is what it is. And people always look at us going like, so her dad's Jewish. Like they always assume that. And you can look at my mom and know she is not Jewish. Yeah. But they all immediately, like when I used to work in Times Square, I had members of the Hasidic Jewish community come up to me and just start speaking Yiddish to me. And I would go like, I'm so sorry, I'm not Jewish. And this was before I knew I was. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm not Jewish. And they would look at me and be like, okay. They're like, and I remember there was a concern on their face. Like, are you okay? Are you lost? Like, sweetheart, do you, are we,
yeah.
Do you need help? Like, I remember there was multiple conversations where they were just like, no, you're one of us. Like, what are you talking about? Like, did someone take you? Like, what's going on?
So crazy.
And that was, and because I didn't know at that point, and I had to like, no, I promise I'm not. I really am not.
Yeah.
And they were just like, okay. So they were calling it out years before I knew.
That is so crazy. And I mean, this is like way woo, right? But there's a girl on TikTok, Tally. You can go look her up. And I would reckon that she would have something to say about that, of why they were picking religion over anything else. And how do I say this? Religious ties can absolutely be passed down through your genetics. It's insane. So it's weird that they even like chose that as a thing to us, but I bet you there was a reason behind it. Yeah, pretty crazy story, because I mean, it's just kind of like obvious, and I feel like there's always a sense, right? Like you sense that something was different in you from your mom and dad. These Jewish people will come up to you and be like, we know you're part of our lineage, girl.
It was,
so
I think
crazy.
When I was 13 years old was when it started. People started asking.
Yeah.
And they were like, she's Jewish, right? And I'd be like, no, I'm in Catholic school. I was an altar server. So, yeah. It was, and it actually, unfortunately, put me in a very dangerous position a few times, because I would unknowingly put myself in dangerous positions. There were multiple times where I was, in spaces or like people would say anti-Semitic things to me, and I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
I didn't understand. And that was, and I look back and go like, I was very lucky. Like there were a few times that it was just like, oh shit, that was what was happening. And I just didn't, I was like, what did that comment mean? Like, what does that mean? And there were times where I had to be in places that were, I'm going to say, not Jewish friendly. And I would have handled those situations so much more differently if I had known.
Yeah.
I would have handled them much differently.
That's
And
crazy.
that looking back at it, it was just like, oh shit, no, I was absolutely putting myself in a very dangerous position, and I had no idea that I was.
Yeah.
And that was something I really wish I knew at that point, because it was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Um, I was very lucky that that nothing ever became violent, but there
Yeah.
were absolutely continuous comments.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I didn't think this conversation would go down that route, but thank you for sharing. Okay, so you have this knowledge at 26 now that you are in fact half Jewish.
Yes.
And life changes, obviously, right? You get that
Yeah.
information. So what kind of path, what kind of road did you start walking down?